Her hands trembled as Emma opened the email. The subject line read, "Welcome back." Emma whispered, "They hired me again." The same company, the same boss who once fired her, had signed the offer letter. Her throat tightened, heart pounding like a drum. She remembered that day, his voice saying she wasn't reliable, that her mistakes cost too much. She carried that wound for years. Now, here was a second chance, handed by the same man who once closed the door. Emma said, "Do I deserve this, or will he remind me every day?" She looked at the faint coffee stain on the printed letter, the kind of mark that lingers like memory. Her career, her dignity, her entire reputation sat inside those words. One wrong move, and she would lose everything again. The email glowed on her laptop screen, lighting her face in pale blues of morning. She pressed her palm against her chest and whispered, "I can't fail this time." Emma walked into the building's glass doors, her reflection fractured in pains. She whispered, "This is it." The receptionist gave a polite nod, but her eyes lingered too long, as if memory whispered her name. Emma said, "First step back." The smell of fresh coffee filled the lobby, sharp and alive. Her badge printed, cold plastic in her hand. She slid it across the scanner, the beep echoing louder than it should. She remembered the day she turned it in, humiliated. She thought, "This badge means everything now." She stepped into the elevator, her chest tight as the floor numbers climbed. Inside the elevator, Emma pressed the button for the 12th floor. A man in a gray suit gave her a quick look, then returned to his phone. Emma whispered, "Keep breathing." Her pulse echoed louder than the elevator music. Each floor ding was a drumbeat of nerves. She remembered when the same elevator carried her down with a box of belongings. She tightened her grip on her bag, whispering, "This time I climb, not fall." The numbers glowed, steady and merciless, each one closer to her past and her test. The elevator doors opened. The office smelled the same: coffee, paper, faint toner. Emma stepped out, feet heavy. Coworkers passed, quick glances exchanged. A man muttered softly, "She's back." Her cheeks burned. She remembered every rumor after her firing. Emma said, "Walk steady." Her heels clicked sharp across the floor, each step echoing louder than whispers. She reached her new desk, bare and waiting, a single chair pulled neatly in. She touched the desk surface, whispering, "Home or prison?" Emma turned and saw him, Richard, the boss who fired her. His eyes caught hers across the floor. He nodded once, cool and measured. Richard said, "Welcome back, Emma." Her heart jolted. She forced a smile, her voice steady but quiet. "Thank you, Richard." His gaze held hers longer than comfort allowed. The air between them was loaded with history. Emma thought, "He gave me this chance, but he can take it away again." The hum of computers seemed to hush in that moment. She whispered to herself, "Don't stumble." Emma sat at her desk, staring at the empty monitor. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard but froze. She whispered, "I know this place, but it feels like a stranger's home." A colleague, Anna, passed by with a smile and said, "Glad you're back." Emma nodded, but inside, her chest tightened. Memories of whispered judgments filled her ears. She remembered walking out with a box of her belongings, tears hidden behind sunglasses. She thought, they all remember. The scent of old paper and coffee mixed with the hum of printers. Her mind replayed Richard's words from years ago, "You let us down." The voice rang like a wound that never healed. She clenched her jaw and muttered, "Not again." Anna stopped briefly and asked, "You okay?" Emma forced a smile, replying, "I will be." She wasn't sure if she was convincing Anna or herself. At lunch, Emma sat alone at the cafeteria's corner table. The clatter of trays echoed. A young man, Daniel, sat across from her with a tray. Daniel said, "I've heard of you. You came back." Emma tensed, then forced a nod. Daniel smiled and added, "It takes guts." She whispered, "It takes more than guts." She poked at her salad, appetite gone. The room buzzed with casual chatter, but she felt every eye glancing. Daniel leaned forward. "Don't worry. People move on faster than you think." Emma whispered, "Do they?" She lifted her gaze to his steady eyes. Something about his calm voice grounded her. She thought, maybe not everyone sees me as broken. The cafeteria smelled of fried food and coffee, a scent too ordinary for her extraordinary nerves. Emma said softly, "Thanks for sitting with me." Later that evening, Emma stood in her apartment, staring at the wall where a diploma leaned in a frame. "Never hung," she whispered. "You don't deserve the wall." Her phone buzzed. It was her sister, Claire. Claire said, "So, how was the first day?" Emma closed her eyes and replied, "Like walking into a storm I left behind." Claire said, "Don't let him break you again." Emma paced the floor, bare feet against wood, and whispered, "I want." Claire's voice softened, "You just want the right to show up again." Emma swallowed hard and said, "Exactly?" She looked at the diploma, its glass scratched, and thought, maybe it belongs on the wall now. The apartment was quiet, except for her breathing. The next morning, Emma arrived early. The office was almost empty, rows of monitors dark. She whispered, "This is the only way." She opened a file Richard had assigned her. Numbers blurred under her eyes. Richard walked by, stopping briefly. Richard said, "I want this right the first time." Emma nodded quickly. His tone was cool but firm, not cruel, yet it cut her nerves. She thought, he still doubts me. She bent over the spreadsheet, heart hammering, whispering, "I'll prove him wrong." The hum of machines filled the silence. Richard lingered a moment longer before walking away. His footsteps echoed, heavy as memory. Emma pressed her palms against the desk and breathed, "Steady!" That night, Emma sat with Daniel in a nearby coffee shop. The hum of chatter filled the space. Daniel said, "You're harder on yourself than anyone else here." Emma stirred her coffee, eyes downcast. She whispered, "Because I can't fail again." Daniel leaned in and replied, "Failure doesn't define you. Getting up does." Emma's lips trembled, almost forming a smile. She said, "You sound too sure." Daniel laughed softly. "I've seen people sink. You're not sinking." Emma looked out the window where the city lights shimmered. She thought, maybe he believes what I can't. She whispered, "I hope you're right." Emma sat at her desk with papers spread across the surface. Deadlines loomed like storm clouds. Richard approached, his voice sharp but steady. "This needs to be ready by tomorrow." Emma nodded quickly, hiding the panic rising inside. She whispered, "Yes, I'll get it done." As Richard walked away, whispers floated behind her from two colleagues. One said, "She's here again, let's see how long." Emma's throat burned. She clenched her jaw and muttered under her breath, "I'm not leaving again." Her screen filled with numbers, blurry with strain. She pressed her fingers hard against her temples. The hum of the office machine sounded like mocking laughter. She thought, every eye is watching for me to fall. Emma missed her bus that evening, papers clutched in her arms. The night air was cold, biting against her skin. She whispered, "Of course, today of all days." She checked her phone, the next bus in 40 minutes. She thought, Richard will see the late email. A cab slowed, but she waved it away, clutching her bag tighter. She muttered, "No shortcuts." She sat on the bench, shivering, as headlights streaked by. She remembered the day she lost her job, missing a deadline because of a late commute. She whispered, "History won't repeat." A text from Daniel buzzed. "Want a ride?" Emma stared at the screen, lips pressed tight. She typed back slowly, "No, I'll wait." The next morning, Daniel walked into her office carrying coffee. He set it down gently. Daniel said, "You look like you didn't sleep." Emma rubbed her temples, whispering, "Deadlines don't wait." Daniel smiled lightly and replied, "Neither does health." She gave a tired laugh. "Tell that to Richard." Daniel's tone softened. You don't have to prove everything in one day. Emma looked at him, startled by his calm certainty. She thought, he believes when I don't. She whispered, thanks for the coffee. The warmth seeped through her cold hands, a reminder of small kindnesses against heavy days. Later that day, Richard called Emma into his office. His tone was firm. These numbers don't add up. Emma's pulse spiked. She leaned forward, scanning the sheet. She whispered, I must have miscalculated. Richard's gaze was cool, not cruel, but heavy with judgment. He said, I can't afford mistakes. Emma's throat tightened as she replied, I'll fix it. He handed the file back slowly. Richard said, do it tonight. She nodded, chest heavy. As she left the room, she thought, every error is a nail in the coffin they're waiting to close. She whispered under her breath, not again. Emma returned to her desk, clutching the file. Anna passed by and said gently, don't let him scare you. Emma forced a smile, whispering, it's not fear, it's survival. Anna lingered, then walked on. Emma opened the file, pen trembling in her hand. Numbers danced, and her mind screamed, one more mistake and I'm done. Daniel appeared briefly, asking, need help? Emma shook her head quickly, whispering, no, this is mine. She thought, I have to prove it alone. The office buzzed, but for her, the air was thick, every breath a reminder of the cost of failure. Emma stepped into Richard's office with the corrected file, her palms damp though she tried to appear steady. Richard's eyes lifted slowly from his papers, gaze cool but not unkind. He said, so, you fixed it. She placed the file on his desk, whispering, yes, it's right now. Richard leaned back, fingers pressed together in thought. He studied her like someone weighing both her present and her past. His voice was steady. You think I fired you because you weren't competent, don't you? Emma froze in place, her throat tightening. She nodded slightly, lips pressing shut. Richard's sigh broke the silence. His words landed heavier than she expected. I wasn't protecting the company from you. I was protecting you from them. Emma's heart thudded in her ears. She whispered, protecting me. His tone grew firm. Politics were messy. They wanted a scapegoat, and you were the easiest name. If I fought, you would have been destroyed, not just fired. Emma gripped the chair back for balance. The revelation cracked the ground beneath her. She muttered, all this time I thought I failed. Richard looked at her evenly and said, you made mistakes, but the final cut wasn't yours. Her breath caught, and the room seemed smaller, heavier. The truth she carried for years had been reshaped in a single moment. Emma's grip on the chair tightened, her knuckles white against the wood. She whispered, why didn't you tell me the truth back then? Richard's expression sharpened, his jaw firm as he leaned forward. He said, because carrying the lesson was necessary, even if the reason was unfair. Emma's stomach churned. Her voice shook. You let me hate you for years. Richard did not flinch. His tone was lower, deliberate. If anger was the fuel that kept you moving, then perhaps it served you better than pity ever could. Emma shook her head slowly, her hair brushing her shoulders as her eyes burned. That wasn't fair, she whispered with restrained anger. Richard's voice cut clean. Fairness rarely survives in this business. Only resilience does. The silence between them stretched, heavy with unsaid words. Emma looked away, her gaze falling to the floor, searching for steadiness. She thought, all these years I believed my worth had been measured and found lacking. Now the truth demands I carry not failure but sacrifice. Her chest rose sharply as if the air itself weighed more. She whispered, almost to herself, you changed my story, and I didn't even know it. Richard leaned back slowly, his face unreadable, letting the truth settle in the room like dust too heavy to sweep away. Emma stumbled out of the office, her steps uneven, heart hammering. The hallway lights felt too bright, burning against her skin. Daniel appeared suddenly, concern flickering across his face. Daniel said, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost. Emma shook her head, whispering, "Everything I thought I knew. It wasn't real." Daniel frowned, confusion deepening. "Explain it to me." Emma's lips parted, but she stopped herself. She whispered instead, "Not yet. I need to sort it out before I can say it aloud." Daniel touched her shoulder briefly, his hand steady, grounding her in the chaos that swirled inside. He said gently, "Whatever it is, don't carry it alone. Some truths get heavier when locked inside." Emma looked up at him, torn between trust and silence. She whispered, "Some truths don't survive being spoken." Her chest ached, her breath shallow, as she walked past him. The corridor stretched endlessly, her steps echoing louder than normal. She thought, relief and betrayal can wear the same mask. "I don't know which one I'm carrying." Daniel watched her go, his eyes filled with quiet worry, while Emma's silhouette dissolved into the fluorescent-lit distance. That night, Emma sat cross-legged on her apartment floor, the old resignation letter spread across her lap. She whispered, "I hated him for this." Claire's voice came through the phone speaker, steady and clear. Claire asked, "Hated who?" Emma's reply was sharp but soft, "Richard. But it wasn't what I thought." Silence held for a moment on the line. Then Claire said, "So what now? Forgive him." Emma stared at the paper, its ink faded, the signature at the bottom like a scar. She whispered, "Forgiving means carrying a new truth, heavier than hate." Claire's tone softened. "You have to decide if this second chance is about survival or about peace." Emma pressed the letter flat on the wooden floor, her hands trembling as though trying to anchor herself. She whispered to the quiet room, "Maybe it's both." The apartment seemed stiller than usual, shadows thick in the corners. Her chest lifted and fell sharply as her mind spun. She thought, hatred was simple, forgiveness is heavier, but maybe it leads forward. Claire's voice returned softly, "You're not the same woman you were then. Don't carry her chains if they don't fit anymore." The next morning, Emma entered the office with new eyes. She thought, "I was never broken, just buried beneath lies." She walked past the desks, colleagues chatting in low tones, none as sharp as before. Across the room, Richard stood, his posture tall, his face unreadable. He met her gaze and nodded once, a silent acknowledgement that spoke more than words. Emma's chest tightened, then steadied. She whispered to herself, "This isn't about proving him wrong anymore. It's about proving myself right." Daniel caught her gaze from his desk and smiled faintly. She returned the smile, fragile but real. She thought, "I feel braver now, though loneliness coils close beside me." She sat at her desk, the glow of her monitor reflecting determination in her eyes. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard, steady now, ready. She whispered quietly, "To earn this chance, I must choose truth over comfort." The hum of the office filled her ears, no longer as hostile as before. She realized her second chance had shifted. It wasn't a gift anymore. It was her own ground to stand on. The conference room lights were sharp against Emma's eyes. She stood before a screen, presenting the report Richard demanded. Colleagues shifted in their seats, silent but attentive. Emma's hands trembled slightly, though her voice steadied as she said, "These numbers reflect the team's growth." Richard watched with an expression that revealed nothing. Emma pressed forward, pulse thudding in her throat. She remembered the last presentation years ago, the one that ended her career. Her voice had cracked then. Today, it did not. She whispered in her mind, "This is my trial by fire." Daniel caught her gaze from the back row and gave a small nod. Emma inhaled deeply, anchoring herself in his quiet support. Midway through her presentation, a colleague raised his hand. Mark said, "These figures don't align with last quarter's data." Emma froze for a beat, the room tightening. She swallowed and replied, "They do, once you factor in seasonal adjustments." Her voice steadied as she clicked to the next slide, revealing clear patterns. Mark leaned back, lips pressed thin. Richard's eyes lingered on her, measuring each word. Emma thought, "Every sentence can either save me or sink me." Daniel's gaze was steady in her peripheral vision. She whispered to herself silently, "Hold the line. No stumbles." The silence broke with murmurs of agreement. As the meeting ended, Richard cleared his throat. The room fell silent. He said, "Emma, stay a moment." Her pulse hammered in her ears as colleagues shuffled out. Daniel cast one last glance before leaving. Richard stood, folding his arms, and said, "You handled yourself well today." Emma blinked, caught between relief and disbelief. She whispered, "Thank you." He added, "But now you must choose, carry the truth you've learned about the past, or let it bury you. Which will it be?" Her chest tightened. This wasn't just about a report. It was about who she would become. Emma sat across from Richard in his office later that day. He said, "I could tell them the truth about your firing, clear your name completely." She whispered, "Why now?" Richard replied, "Because you've earned it." She stared at him, heart pounding, and said, "If you tell them, they'll know I didn't fail, but they'll also know you sacrificed me." Richard's face was stone. "That's the choice," he said. Emma's chest burned. To clear her name would ruin his. To protect him meant carrying the weight alone. She whispered, "What matters more, vindication or integrity?" That evening, Emma walked out of the building into the cool night. Her decision weighed heavy, but firm. She whispered, "I won't destroy him to free myself. My work will prove me." The city lights glimmered around her, neon reflections on wet pavement. Daniel joined her at the corner and asked, "So what happened?" Emma smiled faintly and replied, "I chose dignity over applause." Daniel looked at her, admiration flickering in his eyes. She thought, "The ledger is changed forever, not by his words, but by mine." The night felt less like burden, more like a beginning. The office buzzed with the start of a new week. Emma arrived earlier than anyone, her desk organized, files ready. She whispered, "Consistency. That's the key." Richard walked by, offering a brief nod without words. It was not approval, but acknowledgement. Emma thought, this is how respect begins. Anna stopped by, leaving a file on her desk with a smile. Anna said, "You've changed the air in here, you know." Emma chuckled softly, whispering, "I'm just trying to breathe steady." For the first time, the whispers around her weren't sharp but muted, less suspicious. She realized the second chance wasn't about perfection, but about showing up every single day. At lunch, Emma sat with Daniel and Anna. The table was filled with chatter, light laughter. Daniel said, "See, not everyone's waiting for you to fall." Emma smiled faintly. "It feels different now." Anna added, "People respect patterns, not promises." Emma nodded slowly, realizing truth in Anna's words. She whispered, "Patterns I can build." The cafeteria's noise no longer felt like judgment, but like belonging. For the first time, Emma took a real bite of her food without the weight of eyes pressing into her back. She thought, trust is slow, but it's happening. That evening, Emma returned home. She stood before the wall where her diploma still leaned. Slowly, she lifted it and pressed a nail into the wall. She whispered, "You belong here now." She hung it, her reflection faint on the glass. Claire's voice came over the phone, "Sounds like progress." Emma said, "Not just progress, proof." Claire replied, "You're proving it to yourself more than anyone." Emma's throat tightened as she whispered, "Yes." For years, the diploma was a silent accusation. Tonight, it became a badge of endurance. The next day, Richard called a team meeting. Emma sat among her colleagues as he addressed the group. Richard said, "This quarter's success is built on steady hands." His gaze flicked briefly to Emma, a subtle recognition. Emma's chest lifted, though she remained composed. She whispered silently, not applause, accountability. Daniel glanced at her with quiet pride. Anna leaned over and whispered, "He sees it." Emma replied softly, "That's enough." The weight of her past wasn't gone, but it no longer defined her. Later that night, Emma walked home through quiet streets. The city glowed with soft lights, sidewalks damp from a recent rain. She whispered, I didn't need vindication. I needed strength. Her steps were steady, lighter than before. She thought of Richard, of the truth he carried, and the silence she chose. She whispered, integrity is heavier, but it carries me forward. The air smelled of rain and earth, fresh and alive. Emma lifted her head, realizing her second chance wasn't about being forgiven. It was about building a life that didn't collapse again. Emma arrived early again, the hum of the office quiet before the day began. She placed her coffee on the desk and whispered, every day counts. Richard walked past, pausing just long enough to say, good work yesterday. It was simple, almost too plain, but it landed with the weight of years. Emma said softly, thank you. She watched him walk on, his figure blending into the rows of desks. For the first time, his words didn't feel like judgment. They felt like acknowledgement. She thought, it's not about being remembered for mistakes anymore. It's about being trusted. During lunch, Emma and Daniel sat outside on a bench. The air was crisp, sunlight bright across the courtyard. Daniel said, you seem lighter. Emma laughed softly, maybe because I stopped dragging old ghosts. Daniel smiled, that's the Emma people needed to see. She turned her face to the sky, warmth on her skin. She whispered, I needed to see her too. Silence settled comfortably between them, broken only by birds overhead. Daniel said gently, so was it worth it? Emma nodded slowly. Every scar taught me how to hold steady. That evening, Emma attended a small gathering of coworkers at a cafe. Anna raised a toast saying, to Emma for reminding us that second chances are real. The table clinked glasses. Emma blushed, whispering, I just showed up again. Laughter filled the table, warm and unforced. For once, her name wasn't followed by whispers of doubt, but by smiles. She thought, this is what belonging feels like. Richard wasn't there, but his shadow didn't hover anymore. Emma realized the story of her firing was no longer the loudest thing in the room. Back at home, Emma stood in her apartment, looking at the diploma on the wall. She whispered, you finally belong here. She touched the frame, remembering years when it sat hidden. Claire's voice over the phone said, I'm proud of you. Emma smiled softly. I'm proud of me too. She realized pride wasn't arrogance, it was survival earned. The apartment felt warmer than it ever had. She thought, it's not about what Richard remembers, it's about what I choose to carry. The next morning, Emma walked into the building with steady steps. She looked at her reflection in the glass doors, no longer fractured but whole. She whispered, second chances aren't free. I paid in full. The words echoed in her chest, sharp and true. As she passed the lobby, she didn't lower her eyes. She thought, I belong here not because he let me back, but because I earned it. The hum of the day began, but Emma's stride was unshaken, her place no longer borrowed.